Yo, parish orphans and retrogrades, happy Saturday in the pre-conclave period. Today, there's some more synod news, and it seems to be scrutable. Give us a clue as to what's going to go on Wednesday's conclave. With me to give analysis is my friend Ryan, the Southern attorney. How are you doing, Ryan? Back for more analysis.
Sorry, let me add him in.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry about that. There he is. There he is. Hi, Ryan.
Yeah. Hey, how's it going, everybody? How are you, man?
Yeah, it's fun when you're just doing speculation about what's to come. It's fun to have a buddy with you, someone that follows this stuff closely, as closely as I do. That's why it was work to have you on a couple days ago. I think that's why with today's news, I wanted to get your opinion. A couple of the stories involve interventions by Cardinals Sarah, Burke, and Zen. Interventions are when they give a kind of address at the pre-conclave meetings. They were evidently not met well, not a shocker. There are only a handful of actually faithful Catholic cardinals in the whole College of Cardinals. And I'm gonna play for you what Raymond Arroyo said about this in a second. But Ryan, should we be surprised that Cardinals Zen, Burke, Sarah are not met well at the conclave? This is not actually news. This is more of the same, ain't it?
Again, I want to be optimistic. I don't want to give away what's in the clip, but I would like that maybe they were listening attentively or something like that. But yeah, when you look at Francis installed 108, like we said last time, it's not at all to be unexpected that they're not going to get the round of applause that a Parler would, that a Fernandez would, or something like that. They're guys on the peripheries.
Yeah, and that's really sad that of all the Catholics who have been in the faith for less than 5 years, let's say that, they look at you saying stuff you've said or I've said in group chats or whatever it is, and they're like, okay, whatever, trad. I'm like, guys like you and I, don't even call ourselves trads. I mean, I'm the TLM is important to me, but I don't even call myself a trad. It's just, I want to, and I don't have a big contrarian spirit. I want to be able to just go into the final day of this conclave, and at the end of the day, when they get white smoke, go, wow, awesome. I'm not only am I proving to the world, I'm proving to myself. I don't have this contrarian spirit. I don't need trouble. I would love a Cardinal Sarah pontificate where I feel like I have a Holy Father that I can learn from spiritually. We all need that. It's not going to happen, says I on Saturday before the Wednesday, because I know, because I've studied it closely for the last 10 years now, how curial politics works, how Romanita works, how Rome works. I've lived there. I've studied there. I've studied at the center where the Shadow Council occurred, the Pontifical Gregorian University. I have a degree from there. That's where they would conclude. That's where they would conclude their Vatican II days from 1962 to 1965. The liberals, anyway, is saying this is how we're going to game it out for tomorrow to make our secret agenda go. This is a fact. That's been happening since at least the late 50s of last century. So I'm not this skeptical guy. I thought Trump was going to win the presidency in 2020. He didn't. I'm not one of these guys that will never acknowledge a white pill. I just want that to be, I want to put that out there before we play this clip.
We have the Greg, as we called it, on the screen right now, where Tim went to school in Rome. Good times.
Okay, people can see that?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Oh, I mean, it was great times in our lives, but that's when I started learning. I was a little naive when I started going there, but that's when I started learning, wow, the Shadow Council, Vatican II Shadow Council, after the day's proceedings concluded, that's where they did it, was at the Greg. And, Jesuits were running that council, and that is never good. And it's never good to have a Jesuit Pope, and it's never good to have Jesuits running the things at Vatican. We also learned that 2 of the 3 assistants to Camerlengo, we'll get to this in a second, Ryan, are bad guys, are Cardinal Tagle and other liberal. Actually, 3 out of the 3 assistants to Camerlingo are liberals. That also doesn't bode well. What's giving you hope as we're navigating through this, Ryan? Because you're more hopeful than me.
Just all the pushback that you got in the last years of the Francis papacy, when you get a huge blowback against TC, Traditionis Custodes, and then the what looked like is a black pill, Fiducia Supplicans, but the reaction was kind of a white pill. It started to see, after Fiducia Supplicans came out, you started to see very, very obvious opposition to the papacy of Francis and his politics. So I'm hoping that woke some guys up. They're still they want to save face. They want to not just completely trash the papacy, the Francis papacy, because that's good PR. But I'm hoping that those kind of things woke people up, and we'll see. Maybe especially the African cardinals take the lead here, like we did in the Amazon Synod and in the push against Fiducia Supplicans as well.
Yeah, I hope so too. But look, I mean, here just not to go back and forth too much before I want to play some of these main clips we have to respond to, but it doesn't hurt to go back and forth a little bit. I mean, there was pushback in 2014, the first full year of a Francis pontificate. There was serious pushback by the Polacks and the Africans and some of the Asians and a couple of the Americans on the Family Synod, the Extraordinary Family Synod in 2014, and then the Ordinary Family Synod in 2015, which gave us, it was sort of a fake kabuki theater pre-game for Amoris Laetitia, which was a done deal. He was going to do a Amoris Laetitia, which gave us communion for divorce and civilly remarried in early 2016. He was pretending the way that commies do, that this was a grassroots campaign, that everyone just wanted it, that this is the time, in Hegelian terms, this is an idea whose time has come. We need to give communion to the divorced and civilly remarried, even though Jesus says you can't do this. So there's pushback then, and it didn't prevent any of the terrors of the Francis pontificate from coming to pass. That's just, you respond, because I know you were never into pope-splaining while Francis was reigning pope for 12 years. You and I will always had that in common. I hope you're right with your enthusiasm for what happens on Wednesday, but I feel like it's more of the same. I mean, the same power has been ruling the Vatican and the Curia for this long, and a little bit of pushback from some quiet, holy, not so bold men like Cardinals Burke and Sarah, in my view, that doesn't signify much meaningful that we're hoping for is going to come to eventuate.
Yeah, I remember the pushback around the family on the Synod and Amoris Laetitia. I followed that very closely. I was in seminary at the time. I woke up super early the morning AL came out. It comes out, I think, around noon Rome time, so about 5 a.m. in my time. So I got up at 4 a.m. I printed it out, and I just started reading right then. We had morning prayer back then at like 7 a.m. or 7:30, so I was trying to get in as much as I could, waiting to see what he was going to do about divorce and communion, right? And so I read through the whole thing, and it's pretty boilerplate Catholic stuff for the most part. Definitely not in the style of Benedict, definitely not in the style of JP2, much more like kind of homey language used. And then you get to that footnote. I can't remember what it was, footnote 58, something like that. I don't know.
400 something, chapter 8. And chapter 8 was
I would distinguish the pushback around Amoris Laetitia and Fiducia Supplicans with this, that Amoris Laetitia, the pushback seemed to be during the Synod and before AL came out, so before the official pronouncement. Whereas with Fiducia Supplicans, the main pushback comes out after the official act has come out. And I think that's a game changer.
All right, well, let's listen to what Raymond Arroyo, who is pretty red-pilled, not quite black-pilled, with his papal posse, Father Gerald Murray and Dr. Robert Royal. They were pretty red-pilled, not quite black-pilled. They were closer to black-pilled by the end of the Francis pontificate. They sound a little more optimistic, a little bit more like you than me here. But again, we're if you had the 5 of us in a room, you, me, and these 3 guys, we're all pretty much on the same page with what we want in a pope. Can you play that first clip, please,
Sure.
Steffi?
And excuse me if it's out of order, so I'll just play the first one that shows up.
Yeah, I think that should be the one I'm going for.
Okay.
Move on to Cardinal Joseph Zinn, Cardinal Sarah, Cardinal Raymond Burke, all addressed these congregations this week. And I am told their comments were spiritual. They voiced some concern about the Francis legacy, but I'm told they were not warmly received by the overall congregation. Your reaction, why do you think that might be happening?
Well, if that's the case, maybe they were a little bit stunned to hear what they were hearing, but perhaps they were just reflecting on what was said. As always, restating Catholic teaching doesn't necessarily produce immediate applause, but it does give people a basis to recenter. And if you're kind of a radical and want to change a lot of things, now they're smart enough to have to respond to. And intellectually honest people just don't ignore what smart and faithful people have to tell them.
Yeah. You want to comment at all?
Yeah, I think that we recall the conclave that Francis was elected at. It was during his intervention that he actually rose to greater prominence as a candidate for the papacy. Some people go so far as to say that it was the intervention, as they call these speeches, that he gave during that general congregation that really kind of clinched things for him and put him at the forefront.
Can we pause there?
We keep saying that these cardinals are very new to the job, a lot of them.
Yeah, let me know if you guys want me to pause during the live.
I was surprised, Ryan, you respond to this, to hear Robert Royal sounding so naive in my personal estimation, because I've corresponded with Dr. Royal. He's a really good man. I think he gave money to us when I got fired. He's a really nice, good man, an honest man, and he was saying unpopular stuff in the heart of the Pope-splaining period against the Pope-splainer. So I respect this man who writes over at the Catholic thing. I like Robert Royal. But to say that Cardinal Bergoglio really locked it in, that is the papacy, by giving his intervention at the pre-conclave meeting of cardinals in 2013, smacks of just someone that hasn't been through the wash cycle on this for the last 12 years. Maybe we thought that in 2013, but in 2014, courtesy of Austin Ivory and Cardinal Gottfried Daniels and other admissions by party opponents, we were treated to an upfront seat of what had happened, and they knew that Bergoglio was coming in 2013. One French cardinal even says he knew it was going to be 2013 that Benedict retired and gave it to Bergoglio. We don't have that French cardinal's name, according to Julia Meloni, but this was all cooked up, man. So, and I think Dr. Royal knows this, or maybe he's just forgotten it. Maybe he's getting swept up, and maybe we'll get a Catholic Pope enthusiasms. To me, it just sounds like naivete. Cardinal Bergoglio did not wrap it up with his last conclave's pre-conclavial intervention. That's just not historically accurate. What do you say, Ryan? I mean, to me, it sounds naive.
I don't know. You might think that I'm a little naive on this one, because I've always tended to think that the way the gaming works is that they're gonna get all of their guys online with their one guy. So here it was Bergoglio, and then from there they got a strong cohort, and they go in to the conclave with the idea that we're gonna start the negotiations, we're gonna do the machinations, we're gonna make the promises, we're gonna do the deal cutting that we have to do when we're in there, and we're gonna start from this strong base. That's kind of how I've always thought about it. And then that gives some room to the intervention of Bergoglio being that campaign speech that starts the whole process for them. And maybe they go from there.
I guess what I'm saying is, I don't think any of that's wrong. But what I'm saying is, it's like when you're a little kid before you get the talk from your parents, and you're like, oh, my parents are best friends. The most they do is hold hands, maybe a peck on the cheek. And then along came me down the river in a Moses basket, or I was dropped by a stork. And same thing with all my brothers and sisters. You know, it just sounds like that. Like, this is how conclaves work. Everybody enters with an open mind. All of these cardinals, they have no political agenda. They come in and they just want to hear the best speech, and then they're going to cast their vote for that guy. This sounds not what you said, not even what Royal said, but I guess what's implied by what Dr. Royal said. It sounds idiotic to me. That isn't how the world works. That's not even how the church actually worked in the High Middle Ages, even when we had simony and lay investiture. We still were getting decent popes most of the time. And even the bad popes weren't un-Catholic or anti-Catholic. But so you can't say that over the last 1,000 years of the church, especially after conclaves 265 and 266, the 05 and the 13 ones. That it's hard for me to wrap my mind around that.
Yeah, to have the machinations, to put all the dominoes and the puzzle pieces together, you have to have some type of mechanism that connects you to all, or at least most, the 2/3 of the players, right? So maybe this election is the one to be a little naive with, insofar as everyone has said that this College of Cardinals does not know each other well, that instead of putting in resources of bringing them together throughout the several years to get to know each other, they poured in resources to the synods and the synodal synodality. And because of that, those networks aren't there for the shadow guys to start making their moves. And maybe that does give a little bit more room for from freewheeling politics, so to speak, you know?
I hear that. Yeah, freewheeling politics in the optimistic sense. Yeah. I hear that. I incline, whatever. I mean, yeah, I think that's reasonable. I incline toward the view that when the cardinals don't know each other, Francis made 12 or 13 consistories, made more cardinals than any recent pope, but he didn't let them intermix some. That's not a racial term because they're very racially intermixed. He didn't let them get to know each other. I was thinking that was more because they're going to be thinking, well, my cardinal episcopal patrimony is Pope Francis, so I'm just going to vote at the next conclave with the guy that looks the most like him. Maybe that's too much cynicism or skepticism on my part, that it even strays into a kind of naivete on its own. Well, we'll see. Could you hit the rest of that clip, Stevie? Sure. Maybe you're right.
A lot about other people, and so it may just be that they were shocked that there was a kind of another line that people were pursuing. I mean, we heard from Cardinal Parler, that we need to continue the line of mercy, which I think is correct. But is there anything else? I mean, some other things that are going to be brought.
I'm so glad you brought him up, because that was going to be my next question. We've got to get into some of these candidates. I don't want to get too deep, but we owe it to the audience to at least talk about the people who are being most talked about here in Rome and who we're hearing. Secretary of State Pietro Parler, I guess he lost the job when Pope Francis died, but Parler, who was Secretary of State, considered a major contender at this conclave. He was, of course, one of the architects of the Vatican-China deal that we've been talking about for years.
Mentioned that last time.
He's the keeper of that agreement.
In our last show.
Your thoughts on that candidacy and what it might mean to the papacy?
Well, he's the best-known cardinal because he's been, as Cardinal Secretary of State in the news. Certainly all the cardinals in Rome would meet him when they were made cardinals.
Know him, yeah.
It's well-known. And he was the one that Pope Francis entrusted his agenda, particularly on the question of the China deal. But that's also, something that he's bearing now around his neck, responsibility for turning over to the Chinese Communist Party the selection of bishops. And we just heard the news yesterday that the Communist Party instrument, which is the Schismatic Patriotic Association, has appointed 2 more bishops. So the China deal, number one, never made public, which is not a good thing. And then secondly, the results have not been a restraint on the part of the Chinese communists from exercising control. So that deal has to be renounced by the next pope. I don't think Cardinal Parler would do that. Hopefully, if he is elected, he'll modify it. But that's part of his legacy that he'll have to, bear as something that the cardinals will consider in their thoughts.
Cardinal Parler in this square the other day, it was a mass for youth, and he wore a mitre that Pope Francis wore. I'm told by people who were there that it was
jarring.
Yeah, it didn't quite play.
Well, some of the cardinals that I trust that I've been talking with here regret that the new cardinals don't know each other very much, and that's an internal church matter. But some of them have also said they're worried that some of the cardinals from the peripheries aren't that much aware of secular questions. And of course, the Chinese question is both a kind of a secular and an interchurch matter. To me, it's a great hindrance. I mean, you have to think through very carefully about Cardinal Parler and why he did that. We know that Cardinal McCarrick also was involved in those negotiations.
Yeah.
What element, I hope someday we'll find out what exactly that role was that he played. But it's not solely the fact that the cardinals are not aware of some of the controversies within the church or sensitive to them. I think they also need to be sensitive to the church in the world. And it'll be interesting to see if that element begins to emerge during the conflict.
There's some other candidates we're hearing about. Cardinal
Can you pause there, Steph?
Sure.
So a few other bits of news in regard to Cardinal Parler. Once he had that health scare where it seemed like they were trying to rule him out. That happened a few hours before we went live on Thursday, Ryan. Also, this just broke this morning. He seems to be reaching out to and I guess a legal way to make an appeal to the Cardinal Erdo support, which is right of center, in certain policy matters. He seems to be trying to take over some of the electoral ground of Cardinal Erdo. That recently broke. Yes, he was the architect of the Vatican deal. I don't know why Father Gerald Murray here says maybe he'll amend the deal. He was the architect of it, together with Uncle Ted McCarrick, at the behest of Francis. So I don't think Parler would be good. I hope the Erdo people don't go along with him, and there's no hope that he would undo the Vatican-China deal, which essentially allows investiture by communists. And I don't know why they're saying so.
Yeah, the other news on his health scare is now they're saying that was a false leak. So they're coming out and saying that there was no being out there about his health. So again, what's the truth? And no one really knows when it's coming out of Rome.
Interesting. Yeah, I heard that too. Remember at the time I said this could be a something like a false leak.
Yeah.
I was saying that. I was like,
I'm hoping that Erdo with being a candidate, with being that clear-minded, I would think that he's much more of a straight talker. He's diplomatic insofar as he's on the world stage. He's in Hungary, and so he's got all those things going on, but he's not really a politician. So I would hope that he's not going to succumb to the craftiness of Parler insofar as he's just able to read between the lines more. One thing we also talked about is how this election is similar to primaries insofar as you have the multiple front runners. Some of them drop out. They throw all their base to another guy. And even though I'm optimistic, I sort of think, well, how much overlap is there among the conservative front runners, right? So that would work against us if all the same guys who would back Burke, who would back Erdo, who would back Sarah, how much of that demographic overlaps? That I would think that probably pretty a good bit, and that doesn't work in our favor too well.
No. That's exactly. It's simple electoral politics that I've been following. People have to remember, to our last show, we got some people that were saying, "Oh, you're just being fashionably cynical, Tim," and to some extent, Ryan. Remember that this is what I'm doing now for a living, and what I value very, very much is accuracy. So there are guys out there that run YouTube channels and podcasts where they make predictions, and they're doing what I call the what's her name? Lynn Wood and Sydney. What was her name?
Oh, the Kraken.
Yeah, the Kraken. There are people out there that run their Catholic accounts so cynically that they're just hoping to get big views on big implausible claims that are black pill claims. And they don't care. They never care to be accountable. That is absolutely the opposite of the way that I've been front facing for 7 years. I mean, my whole thing is, look, I'm cynical, but realistic and not naive enough to have gotten most of these things right. So where I'm trying to make my bread and butter is by accurate prediction. So skepticism, but not cynicism. I try not to go too far, and I'm just trying to be accurate. I want people to look back and be like, oh man, Tim called this conclave right. So if I start seeing more grounds for hope, I start talking with more hope. I felt a little more hopeful right after Francis died. And people all noted, oh, that show right after Francis died, you sounded a little more hopeful, a little less black-pilled. And I'm like, yeah, because I was feeling that way that day. But I didn't really say anything overly naive then either. I'm just saying for the people out there that are listening to this or watching this and saying what you say, that would cast me as dubious in some way, being overly skeptical to get views. That's just not how it works. My audience comes here because, accuracy. Accuracy is the track record, and accuracy was the track record even in predicting stuff with Francis pretty closely. So when it comes to that, so I don't know what you wanted to say there, but I'm trying to hew closely to what I actually think is going to happen on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Can we? We're going to Pizza Balla, Stevie. If I think that's where he goes. If you hit. Play.
Oh, you want to go back to that clip?
Yeah, please.
Okay, sure.
Yeah,
no problem.
Because me and Ryan talked about Cardinal Pizza Balla.
Okay.
Of the Patriarch of Jerusalem, a Franciscan who's navigated that very difficult place between the Palestinians and the Israelis with that fledgling Christian community that he's been trying to hold together. Your thoughts on his candidacy?
No, I think it's a serious candidacy. I think he's a serious man, a man of prayer. He's a man of belief. And he's a man who's had to exactly exercise a political role in the sense of dealing with secular governments, trying to defend the interests of Christians, on the other hand, recognizing the horrors that have been perpetrated against the Israelis. He's a serious candidate in my book.
He's an Italian, which is an odd thing for a Patriarch of Jerusalem. He's an Italian, which they thought would never happen again after all the Palestinians were elected to that post. He's also a biblical scholar. I've known him for about 25 years. And he's just a very sober citizen. And, he's a realist, but he's also a man of deep faith. And he believes, in fact, that the Holy Land is the gospel and is the center of the church, which is an interesting conception considering where he'll be voting in a few days.
Some people are objecting to the fact that he's young. He's about 60, something like that, right? We were talking about this the other day, you recall, and it just struck me that Pope John Paul II was elected at 58 years old, and God bless him. I mean, those years were great years for the Catholic Church and for the world. I mean, he helped to bring down communism in the Soviet Union. So I hope that fact, I mean, obviously, if you're going to elect someone who's younger, you're kind of saying we're going to expect you to be around for a while. But I hope that isn't a factor that plays too large a role. I think they ought to look very carefully at him and make a decision on the basis of who that person is and what they're likely to do in the role. And for my money, he's pretty strong.
Yeah, I think he could emerge as an important compromise candidate between the Italians and those who want to continue Francis's legacy and more traditionalists who are very concerned about the drift in the teaching and the doctrine and the clarity of the faith, particularly when you have all these young people coming to the faith all around the world, converting, wanting baptism. They're seeking something. They want something solid and lasting. They don't want this kind of felt banner guitar mask nonsense. Perpetual dialogue. Any predictions? By the next time we sit here, we will not be part of the live coverage of some of these events here.
Stop there, Stevie. So I think Arroyo said what you said last time, Ryan, that he would be a kind of compromise candidate and that he's not overly trad. And I just don't want that. I would rather have Francis II than that. Now, Pizza Ball is a somewhat unknown quantity, so maybe he's traddier than people know, but he seems to be a unique man of prayer and spirituality. Why is this unique? He's a cardinal in the Roman Catholic Church. So, I mean, address those 2 points. One, do we want a compromise candidate? And two, why is it unique that he's a prayerful dude? He's a celibate prelate in the Roman Catholic Church, for heaven's sakes. That ought to be all of them.
Yeah, I'll start with the second question first, because since he doesn't have a large public profile and I haven't done a whole lot of research on him, so I don't know if he's got a lot of writings out there. My understanding is he doesn't really. So I'm wondering why they're attributing the prayerfulness to him other than maybe just seeing him at Mass. But again, every cardinal celebrates Mass. I mean, I love to hear you guys say that. I like that I'm hearing men that I respect say these things. So I trust, that gives some credibility to it. I do love that he's a biblical scholar. Before we get to the question of compromise candidate or not, I love that he's a biblical scholar. Just thinking about what the encyclicals would look like coming from him. We had JP2, who was a philosopher, and he's well known for being difficult to understand. And
he's a bad philosopher. He's a phenomenologist. Yeah.
And Benedict XVI, who a theologian, definitely reached into the scriptures, was very patristic, but I think it would be very interesting to see a guy who has really come up in the Holy Land and is entrenched in the scriptures and knows how to look at it both spiritually and academically, what he could write and how he could lead the church that way. I would love that. I would love that. As someone who really loves the breviary, who loves the scriptural patrimony of the church. Now, the question of the compromise candidate, I look at that comment from Raymond as compromise in the conclave, kind of like what you're talking about, that we don't really know who he really is. So he could be presented as compromise and then hopefully come out much traddier, right? But otherwise, yeah, I'm not looking for some dude who, unless, I don't know, there's two things. In one sense, I'm kind of sick of hearing all this stuff from Rome all the time. It'd be nice to just be able to, go to Mass, live like a local Catholic, and not be so concerned with all the controversies coming out. So there's something to that. But I'm tired of the lukewarm Catholicism. Right now, I pray the breviary every day, right? And right now, the church is reading the book of Revelation in the breviary. And in that, Christ says, I am going to spit you out because you're lukewarm. I would rather you be hot or cold. Pick a side, pick one, be something, right? And so, yeah, give me Francis II, or, Francis III. Go ahead and skip ahead, right? And really accelerate this thing. Or give me a Sarah. Give me someone who's going to start demolishing in a good way and bringing back some zeal in Catholicism.
Hey, you mean like a conceptual terminus when you say Francis III, like someone that just fast forwards to the logical conclusion of all the entailments that are entailed by people are out there, because we always get some dumb comments like, oh, you can't be Francis III without a Francis II, idiot. And they'll be calling you or me an idiot. And it's like, he meant conceptually numbnuts. But okay, so yeah, I agree with all that. That's good stuff. Can we go to that second clip, Steffi?
Sure. Just
It's only a couple comments from that second clip that are, I think, sort of front loaded that would be, I think, useful for us to respond to.
Okay, let me
What time is it?
Go through here. And sorry, let me see. Which one was that one? I'm trying to look
underneath it. It's the same. It's the papal posse. They brought up a lot of good points.
Okay. All right. Here we go.
Raymond also interviewed Cardinal Mueller. I found that segment disappointing. Cardinal Mueller seemed to not understand a lot of the questions. So
is that the Mueller quote? The Mueller one?
No. This is the second papal posse.
Okay.
I might run through one or two of the clips with him, and I know Ryan has a heart out after.
Okay.
I want to get to a bunch of the stories after this.
Okay. Let me see if it plays. For some reason, it's saying that it's loading. Not working. Do you have it on your end? Maybe you can just play audio. And I can try to sync up later. For some reason, it's not loading it.
Yeah. I mean,
wait, no.
Do we have any of those bookmarked breaking stories? Because I really wanted to get Ryan's take on those.
Yeah, let's I'll go why don't I read through some of those right now while this is still loading. So first one, just an interesting bit of news. The Vatican Fire Brigade has put up the chimney stack, which will announce the election of the new pope. The cardinals will gather obviously in the Sistine Chapel on May 7th to begin the conclave. So we have some images of the actual famous chimney that we'll all be having our eyes on.
Yeah, that's that. So I
never knew that they took it down and reinstalled it. That was kind of funny to me. You know, like the most old institution that's known for, up until recently, maybe known for not changing, and yet in this key moment, it changes and then it just like takes it away. It's really weird.
That's funny.
We also have a video of that right now of them actually. It says Vatican media video shows preparation of the Sistine Chapel for the conclave. A raised floor is built on top of the current floor, and lines of tables are installed for the cardinals. The chimney pipe is situated in the corner closet of St. Peter's Square.
Interesting. Very interesting. What are some of those other quick stories, Stevie?
Quick story also here on the screen. Very good read on formal conclave frontrunner Cardinal. Is it Aveline?
Aveline, yeah.
The outline of his views on, the headline there is Conclave frontrunner Cardinal Aveline's views on Judaism subvert church teaching. So I didn't even know he was in, is that LifeSite? That's LifeSite, yeah. I didn't know he was a front runner. Did you know that?
Yeah, he's been one of the emerging papabili. Have you looked at him at all, Ryan? He sounds he's not a supersessionist, which is bad news.
No, I'm not familiar with him.
He's surging. It sounds like, which is bad. He thinks Jews are older. He's a Frenchie.
Interesting.
For views on Judaism. If you're thinking of a historical or literary...
That's interesting. So and then Cardinal Parolin, Michael Haynes, you mentioned this earlier, the headline from Michael Haynes is Cardinal Parolin trying to canvass Cardinal Erdo's supporters in return for promises to overturn fiducia supplicans and traditionis custodes. And sources suggested so... And then he listed people who were suggesting this as conclave rumors grow before May 7th.
See, here's how I know that's bullshit. What's the most important document to overturn, bar none, no close second place from the Francis pontificate? If it's not overturned, ex post facto, Amoris Laetitia. Yeah. That throws us into a dogmatic constitutional crisis. Amoris Laetitia is bad. I mean, like Traditionis Custodes, I didn't like. Fiducia supplicans, gross. But they're not at the level of doctrinal self-contradiction. I don't know what you think of that, Ryan, but so if that's the whole offering that's Cardinal, the Cardinal Secretary, former Cardinal Secretary of State Parolin was making to get more conservative votes from a more conservative voting bloc, namely Erdo's, then no thanks. I mean, no thanks anyway. And like you said, I hope he's shrewd enough not to fall for this. But it's not even like they're offering the overturn of the head and shoulders most importantly bad Francis document.
Yeah, if we even presume that he is making these offers and that we can also presume he would keep the promises, then it just gives you context into what is important for him, right? What
Right.
does it mean to continue the legacy? And you can start to then decipher what are the revolutionary aspects of this papacy if he's willing to put some on the table and others not on the table.
Exactly.
Again, like so much speculation, so much rumor. We don't know what's true.
Speaking of rumors, the next one says, rumors coming out of Rome say the conclave is ready to elect an African pope.
I call bullshit. It would be great, and if it's not Turkson or one of the few liberals, but I call BS on that. What do you say, Ryan? Straight up BS. I call it out.
It's the hopeful optimism in me is that these guys are united, and we've seen that they're united, and they're united in a conservative way, and it's weird. It seems like they're both respected and not respected within the College of Cardinals. You've had Walter Casper say very disparaging things in the past about Africans. What's that?
Yeah, he said they're just Africans.
Right. Yeah. It's like, oh man, talk about not being able to read the room. But if not respected, I do feel like they're feared though, because they do come together. They are zealous and they fight for what they believe in, and that makes me think that they could be something that could effect some change in here in a positive way. And so, yeah, man, whatever you got to do to get Sarah or Sarah's guy, who would Sarah back? I'm cool with that.
No, I've already pledged to kiss a pig.
You will kiss a pig. I'm thinking of ideas for a pig. We're gonna make that work. If it's a
I don't need bursitis.
If it's a good pope, Tim will kiss a pig on live, and we'll figure out what.
But we said Burke or Sarah. Okay. In other words, I'm very confident I'm not going to have to do so, but I would be thrilled to kiss a pig if it means that.
Why a pig? Is a pig symbolic or anything, or just because it's gross and what is it?
It's an old thing. Remember Mr. G's Deli? And me and Steph grew up in a suburb of Dallas, and he used to say, if something happened, I'd kiss a pig. Terrible local commercials. I just ripped it off from Mr. G's Deli.
Next thing from Michael Haynes as well, who's obviously a very reputable source, but he says, during Cardinals' pre-conclave meeting today, awareness emerged of the risk of the church becoming self-referential and losing her relevance, as she does not live in the world and with the world. There were also important references to ecumenical dialogue and mission.
That one I believe. The church will lose its relevancy. The cardinals that are voting, that form the muscular voting bloc, are all Francis-made people. When they say the R word, relevant, this means we need to be modernist. We need to let the Homo sapiens do God knows what to each other legally. They need, we need women deacon. That's all they mean by relevance. It's not much of byplay, not much of a byword. It's an obvious one. So I believe that story, unlike the Africans are going to give us Cardinal Sarah. What do you believe there?
I would like to know who said it. So, I mean, I was reading it as being said in a way that the church should avoid trying to be relevant. That there's an awareness in the College of Cardinals saying we're getting too relevant. We need to start to distinguish ourselves more. So I would love to know where that's coming from, because that would seem to fly in the face of Sarah and Burke's interventions not being warmly received. So maybe that gives some credence to the idea that it allowed the Cardinals were just taking it in and thinking about it in a good way. I mean, I would love that.
Well, how I read that news break was, most of the Cardinals care about relevancy, and there's this pushback from this very same old countries heard from, or whatever another country heard from, usual suspects. These tired, rigid, old guys. The near 80-year-old conservatives, and there are like 3 of them. So I still see it as bad news. Is that most of the breaking stuff? Because I want to get to this other papal posse segment, Steffi.
Yes, I believe that was the end of it. So I'm having a hard time. For some reason, it's
not okay. I can play Twitter, it here.
So do you want to just do the audio on your end?
Yeah, let's do. And
I'll just, how about this? I'll put on screen just them putting up the Sistine Chapel as a visual while that's
okay.
going.
Can you turn up the YouTube, the Bluetooth monitor, please?
Yes.
Can you hear this, Ryan?
Organizing the conflict.
Yeah.
Now, Cardinal Marx is
Okay.
It was announced this
It's
week
low,
that Cardinal
but
Reinhard
I don't
Marx,
know.
Cardinal Louis Tagle, and Cardinal Dominique Lamberti were all selected by the College of Cardinals in this general congregation to assist the Camerlengo. The Camerlengo is sort of the administrator, Cardinal Kevin Farrell. They will be responsible for organizing the conclave. Now, Cardinal Marx is a major player in the German Synodal Way. We've talked about him for years now. Tagle in the Philippines is considered to be a front runner for the next pope, and Cardinal Lamberti of France is also the proto-deacon of the college and will announce to the world, we have a pope, habemus papam. Your thoughts on this group so close to the organization of this conclave process? I think they were chosen at random.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened, but they're all insiders. We could say the Roman Curia, so it represents the curial importance in doing this. It makes a lot of sense that.
Can everybody hear that? Okay, I'm a little bit low in my earphones on that.
Yeah. Did you hear that? Okay, Ryan. So it's Cardinal Reinhold Marx, one of the gayest dudes in the German Synodal Way, and that's really, really gay. And Cardinal Tagle, and then another liberal that I know less about, were the three, I mentioned this earlier, the three helpers assigned to the Cardinal Camerlengo, Farrell, who's also a lib. And Papal Posse here, I'm kind of going to skip beyond what they said. I just wanted the story. Raymond and Father Jerry and Bob Royal all said, no, I don't think this is a big deal. I think it's randomized, or I think it's just sort of curial politics at work. And they kind of whistled past the graveyard. I'm not used to disagreeing with these three guys. I like them all very much, and I'm usually like, amen, thank you for saying that. They were close to blackpilled under Francis, and now they're just saying stuff like this. We got a Cardinal Camerlengo that's running stuff for the conclave. Marx, who's one of the furthest left guys in the entire cardinalate, in the entire church.
He lived up to his name.
What'd you say? And yeah, nomen est nomen. Yeah, absolutely. And then we got Cardinal Tagle singing the Bruce, and then some other liberal. And these are the four guys that are acting as sort of Camerlengo running stuff. That ain't good for people who are choosing optimism here. What do you say, Ryan?
Yeah, when I first saw this story, I was like, what are the odds? What are the odds? And I didn't know the procedure about it being chosen at random. I do think that's true. But even if it is true, it's still horribly bad. These are the guys who are organizing. Again, I don't know what the procedure of organizing the conclave means, but it's going to at least somehow control the dissemination of information, how groups network with each other. And then therefore, if they have an agenda, which obviously they do, everyone has an agenda, they're going to organize the conclave in a way that is going to give their agenda the most power, whatever that means, whether it means to keep certain groups from interacting with each other as much. It's not a good thing. I can't believe they said that.
What it means is, I couldn't either. What it means, Ryan, is if you were watching 2014, 2015 extraordinary and then ordinary family synods in October of those two respective years, they got pushback from the good African cardinals in 2014 that they weren't expecting. Going into 2015, they were doing such manipulative skullduggery with the procedural due process day to day that even liberal cardinals, moderate liberals, were complaining. By this, I mean they would go into the Circoli Minori, then they would go into the major circles the next day. They were mixing up groups, we were told, at that 2015 family synod, such that the conservatives couldn't team up. There was no more than one conservative per table, and they were attacking them. That's the procedural value of setting these meetings between the bishops, and at times whether we're talking about a synod, a council, or a conclave, or I'd imagine any of the other mini meetings of bishops, or the pre-meetings of bishops or cardinals. It's very, very valuable. So that's what they're doing, that they decide, are we going to be in minor circles and major circles? Are we going to all be together at first? And of course, with conclaves, we're not even told word one about the way the conclave is organized. The 2014 Family Synod, we knew a lot, and then they learned their lesson. 1 Peter 5 in LifeSite News well reported between 2014 and 2015. The liberals learned their lesson. They let very little information out about the way that the circles were structured, but some, Montaigne and some of the other stalwarts got in there, and they were able to report and disseminate the information that they're playing shell games with the rules. At conclaves, we don't even have that. It's the hidden Super Bowl where we don't get to see the playbook, the plays, or the players. So it's really, really bad. I know that it can be outcome determinative just by doing the math here. I don't know if you wanted to say anything else, but it's really, really bad. I'm shocked to hear Bob and Father Jerry saying what they said.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll have to wait for Austin Ivory's new book to know what happens and how it all works out. Yeah,
I tweeted at him earlier. Here's a funny interview that Arroyo did with Cardinal singing the Bruce Tagle. Let me play. He played this, and this is Tagle sounding really, really non-committal. This is from 2014.
Ryan, were you able to hear that? That clip? You were okay. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible to envision a policy that would allow Catholics to divorce and remarry without an annulment, given the church teaching and Christ's teaching on the indissolubility of marriage? Is it possible?
I just came from a meeting of the preparatory committee for the synod. The following things are very clear. The teaching of Jesus and the teaching of the church will not be changed. No, what people are looking at right now, especially the canonists, is this. No, how could canon law and its procedures, reflect more clearly, the teaching of Jesus Christ, and the teaching of the church? Because some people are claiming that the canonical procedures are too rigid, and also some are even asking, do the canonical prescriptions, are they clear about the doctrinal basis, or is the legal canonical path taking its own way quite separately from the doctrinal dimension?
Father,
okay, now what he's saying in between all those little ching chong ping pong Asian noises, no, he keeps doing all that shit. He keeps saying this is before even the Extraordinary Family Synod. They did change the teaching. That did change the teaching. And he was one of Francis's main guys. So he was doing the UTEP two-step before the thing. So he's totally in on it. He's in it up to his neck. The let's give communion to adulterers, Francis conspiracy, Sankt Gallen conspiracy. Tagle's bad news. He's very bad news. And it's interesting when that was dated before the synod. What do you think about that, Ryan?
I didn't realize that was before the synod, but I encourage everyone watching to go and pull up that video and watch it, because I think the visual is as telling, if not more telling, than the words. Because if you watch him, he starts to smile at certain times and will nod his head, which he's trying to control his interviewer in the way that he responds. And I've seen the clip that you just played. I haven't seen everything in full context, but even at the end of it, Raymond seems to kind of like back to, oh, okay. And so, Tagle, by doing that, he'll say, he smiles like, oh, like the canonists, and smiles, and to make you kind of think that, oh, it's just what the canonists are doing, or it's just this thing over here. We can celebrate praxis from doctrine, and we're just trying to figure out how this goes. And he smiles so as to try to like disarm what's going on. So that's just something to be aware of how these guys work, what Tagle or someone like Tagle would do in the media and run the PR game, and to just not fall for that kind of stuff.
It's kind of like why I read the Anti-Federalist papers. Brutus's 4th, 5th, and 6th letters, the Anti-Federalist Brutus, when they're, the constitutional ratification contest of the summers of 1788 and 1789. It's funny because you go back and you read Brutus's 4th, 5th, and 6th letters, and I was like, wow, he dialed it up perfect. This guy got it right. He's like, this is what's going to happen with the federal judiciary. This is what's going to happen with the Commerce Clause. This is what's going to happen with the presidency. And he just got it all right. And you go back and you look at this liar, pants on fire, Tagle, and he was doing the exact Francis two-step. And now we know how it came out. They did change the teaching, and it's a teaching that can't be a teaching. It's a logical antinomy. We can't even have such things. So it's very frustrating to see. And then you get Bob and Father Jerry, who again I like very much, saying stuff that I don't understand about why it's bad that Tagle's in this position of procedural power. I know you have a heart out in 4 minutes, Ryan. I want to get one more clip in with you. And same thing with Cardinal Marx. He's one of the worst. This is horrible. And they're making it sound like no big deal.
Because of the document. Practically, you can do what you want, but we don't agree with that entirely. But go ahead, you can still go to communion. I mean, it is contradictory. And isn't that the heart? Let's just say it. That really is at the heart of the Francis pontificate. It's the contradiction. We're not changing anything, but everything practically is changing.
Well, let's say blessing gay couples. Okay, we were told the church blesses everybody. It's true, we do. We don't ask but when the two people come together who are involved in a sexual relationship, which is inherently immoral, and they ask for a blessing as a couple, they're wearing rings they put on at their civil marriage ceremony. Blessing them is saying, people engaged in sodomy are blessable in that capacity because they're doing it together and we're going to bless them together. Wrong. That has the next pope doesn't change that. We're going to have a very serious crisis in the church.
We're going to turn into Anglicanism.
I mean, I wrote a column about this earlier in the week called "Mercy, Mercy, Mercy," like the old title of the song goes. And and mercy, of course, is a central concept of both Judaism and Christianity. We believe in a merciful God, but we also believe in a God of justice, of truth, of fidelity. And so, any one of those virtues, absent the other virtues, if that gets running wild, that's when you get into difficulties. All those must be kept in play at the same time. So we have truth that is faithful to the gospel, but is also merciful.
This whole thing, the conclave we're about to witness, and the whole lead up seems to be, and I've talked to a lot of cardinals in my 2 days here. There seems to be a showdown over the synodal way, whether the new way of deciding doctrine and governing the church will continue or die. But do the traditional cardinals have a candidate?
Good question. We can read, what's said. I think there are some outstanding figures who are there.
Ryan, because you have to go. You answer this. For one thing, I think you agree with the way they all three characterize the central problem with the Francis pontificate. I know we've talked about it lots. And then they're saying, okay, so the second central question is synodality. Is there even a real papabile conservative that's totally anti-synodality, which is what a good pope needs to be? What do you say in closing here?
I'm kind of positive on what anyone would do re-synodality. It just because synodality, from what I was seeing, didn't really seem to take with anybody. I mean, it seemed like some people, yes, but it seemed like a lot of the people involved were annoyed with the way it went down and see it as kind of like a headache. So I'm hoping that no matter who gets in, it's gonna just be dropped. I know Francis did something to continue in 2028, so I'm hopeful that's going to get dropped because it just seems like everybody's kind of annoyed with it.
Everyone's annoyed with Vatican II. Everyone's annoyed with the way the 70s followed in the church, including like diocesan education. Pretty much everyone was sick of the Francis pontificate, and because it's top down, it doesn't end up making any change. That's why I'm so furrow-browed about what's going to happen on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I really think so. Ryan, so what are you doing? Shout out your I know you have a Substack. I want people to be able to visit that. I know you're starting podcast. So tell everyone where they can find you.
Yeah, just go on Substack, type in "pray and work." That's where you'll find me. It comes from the Benedictine Latin phrase "ora et labora." It's something that's really affected my life, and along with the four senses of Scripture. I combine those two to look at Scripture, look at the readings of the day, look at the breviary, and apply the Christological, the moral, the all the different ways you can look at Scripture, apply it to your own life, especially as a husband and as a father, because nowadays the father's role has really been minimized to just provider, but it's so much more than that. You're priest, prophet, and king of your family. And so you got to be plugged in to the resources of the church so that you can give your family that formation, that leadership, that priesthood, that kingship, that prophecy that it needs. And so I try to do it myself, and I write about it to help others to do it. So just check out Pray and Work. And every now and then I'll dabble in some political talk as well, but only insofar as I think it might relate to just the common dad trying to live his life. So, Tim, I appreciate you having me, man.
Yeah, God bless you. I guess I will. I didn't think I would, but these clips are longer than I remember them being. So love you, bro. And you can just hop off, and I'm going to go on with some of the clips, the part of the interview that Raymond did with Cardinal Mueller. But God bless you, Ryan, and we'll see you soon. We'll talk to you next week.
Tim, can you please respond real quick? Because a lot of people are talking about this. The Trump dressed as the Pope, bro.
Oh, Ryan was good on this. Is he gone?
He's gone. I know. Yeah. I wanted to get that in there, but I'm sorry. I thought that was kind of funny. A lot of Trump. So the context is, for those on podcast and not seeing this on screen, Donald Trump tweeted an AI image of himself dressed as a Pope. Yeah, and without comment, I think, right?
Yeah.
So people were freaking
Catholics
out.
are clinging their pearls. I think it's kind of silly. Ryan was arguing with some mutual friends about this. He had my view that it's just kind of silly, and Catholics are weirdly up at arms about it. I mean, look, I don't really relate to President Trump. I think he's more swamp than drain the swamp. I think he's a pro-feminist, pro-Zionist, old boomer who's not Catholic. He doesn't know shit about Catholicism, and even his Catholic wife is pro-abortion. See, the difference between me and other people out there weighing in on this stuff publicly is I don't forget, do I? I don't forget the 2014, 2015 family synods. I don't forget. I will never forget that Melania Trump did that pro-abortion commercial. I don't forget how many times Trump said, "Oh, do you want a woman Supreme Court candidate?" Sorry, you're dead to me, man. I mean, not literally, but you're my enthusiasm for the Trump presidency is dead to me once I find out he's a feminist. That's the worst thing you can be, the leftist you can be. Ryan, I said, hey, you want to comment on the Trump Pope tweet? And he said, Catholics, stop taking yourself so seriously.
Yeah, there it is.
There's a reason men are comics and women aren't. He says men can take a joke about themselves. It's a feminine quality to get worked up about a joke. Thank you. I mean, that's what this channel stands
And it wasn't even that funny. I mean, everybody's like kidding. It
was a
that
dumb joke.
It wasn't that particularly unique, and it wasn't particularly funny, and then people are like freaking out over it.
Yeah, they're making it seem funnier than it even was. It wasn't even that funny.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Tim, I don't know if we have time afterwards, but maybe
IQ
we
gate. Litmus test for who to have a beer with, Ryan says. I say IQ gate.
That's so good.
Yeah, go ahead, Stevie.
Maybe we can go through the poll results that we did that got kind of viral for a little while. But
yeah, run through those. Then I'm going to go through his some of the questions that Arroyo asked Cardinal Mueller. Mueller's answers were unusually inarticulate. He's normally super articulate. It's not like an ESL speaker when you're talking to a German, but his answers ran around things. But some of the ways that Raymond made the questions, formulated the interrogative, I think was worthwhile, and I'd like to sort of respond to him. Yeah, do you want to share the poll result?
Yeah,
We get over 20,000 responses on.
Let me see. I'm trying to because I'm scrolling down to your Twitter because a lot has been happening on.
Yeah, we've been
Twitter
unusually active
lately. Yeah, so excuse me. I'll just here's
particularly with the NBA playoffs. I do these harikari, self-suiciding, because I know no one's going to pick up on them because people don't follow me for NBA, and Catholics hate sports or whatever, which I think is gay and lame. But during NBA season, I can't help if there's an anti-LeBron thing when he lost, like the loser he is, or faked he was in the hospital because he bumped his knee minorly. Or a pro Russell Westbrook thing. So I do a lot of those also this time of the year. And I know like 10 of you will even know what I'm talking about.
So you did a poll, 15 questions, and we were directing this to lay Catholics. What do you want?
How many responses to the first one?
19,275
Oh, we didn't
for
even
the first
hit 20,000.
one. Yeah, so it kind of slowed down there for a while. But first question, the traditional Latin Mass, and the options are restricted, unrestricted. And for 11.4% of people of that nearly 20,000 said it should be restricted, and 88.6% said unrestricted. The future Pope 2 options are protect tradition or modernize the church. Protect tradition won at 89.5%, and those who wanted to modernize the church 10.5%, and that was 12,005
respondents.
Yeah. Communion options are in the hand only or on the tongue only, and 77.8% of people said on the tongue, 22.2% said in the hand, and that was 11,000 votes.
I prefer the phraseology on the mouth. The on the tongue always just sounds weird. But
yeah, I know. Altar rails, for and against were the options. 81.8% said for, 18.2% said against, and that was nearly 11,000 votes on that one. Girl altar boys, 28.2% said for, and against 71.8%, and that was nearly 11,000.
30% of 11,000 respondents are wow.
Yeah, a lot of these Catholics out there, you guys got your girls as girl altar boys, which, by the way, people were upset about this. The purpose of a altar boy is for potential training to become a priest. Girls obviously have no business being up there. There's no point. If they want to participate in the Mass, they can sit in the audience with everybody else and participate. So a lot of people, there are a lot of comments on that one. A lot of people, my daughter, I don't see why my daughter can't be a girl altar boy.
Because you're fake and gay.
Question 6, blessing same-sex couples. 4, 13.2% against 86.8%. And that was nearly 12,000 votes as well.
Wow.
Okay, this one was really surprising. Communion for the divorced and remarried. So options for and against. For 39.5%, against 60.5%. And that had 11,239 votes. Some people were saying that it was unclear whether we were talking about annulments, people who are annulled and then remarried.
But that shows what morons they are. If it's like, well, what did you mean annulment? Because have you been awake since Amoris Laetitia? That was like the centerpiece of the first half of Francis' pontificate. Obviously, there's a pre-context there that we're responding to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just sick of it, man. I can't believe 4 out of 10 Twitter Catholics who tend to be more conservative and traditional are for contradicting Jesus, who said, if you divorce your wife and you marry another, you're committing adultery. And of course, you combine that with other places in Scripture where it says, if you receive communion unworthily, you eat and drink damnation upon yourself. Idiots.
A lot of comments in about the girl altar boys and this sort of thing, where it's like, as a Catholic who went through 12 years of Catholic school, it's like, you know less than anybody if you went through 12 years of Catholic school. It's like, it's worse than a secular education, you guys. They don't get it.
Particularly as a boomer.
Yeah, it's a boomer. So female deacons, number 8, for and against. So for 10.7% against 89.3%, and that was 11,600 votes. The German Synodal Way, for and against. For 9.6% against 90.4%, and that's 9,354 votes.
Is that the only question that we topped, the correct Catholic answer topped 90%? You had a bunch of 89 point something.
I think so. Also has the least amount of votes. So people didn't even know what the heck that was.
Because they're idiots.
And there's still 9 hours left on this poll. So if you're on Twitter, go ahead and take it. Do you want the Pope to focus on climate change? Yes and no are the options. Yes, 15.7%. No, 84.3%. And that was 11,400 votes. Making priestly celibacy optional. For and against. For has 21.9% against 78.1%, and that was 11,200 votes. The validity of Pope Francis II-B, now this is interesting. Options are looked into and left alone. Looked into got 36.1%.
Whoa.
Left alone, 63.9%, and that had 10,500 votes.
Unbelievable. Looked into, that doesn't even mean we know how the outcome will go. Every Pope is sort of de facto looked into, or at least allowed to be. Is that the end of it?
No, we have 3 more and I'll go fast.
All right.
Were you pleased with Francis's pontificate? 36.8 said yes. 63.2 said no. That was 10,000 votes. Prefer the TLM versus the Novus Ordo. TLM 62.3, Novus Ordo 37.7. That was 8,700 votes. And last question, do you think the majority of the church hierarchy stands for? Options are good and evil. Good won at 79.3%, evil 20.7%, and that was 9,800 votes.
Wow. Oh, so that's the dumbest answer yet. So these guys think that they should also have had to, like, if the technology could accommodate it, say, how long have you been Catholic? 2 years, 3 years? There's a seniority thing.
They don't understand what had been happening, like what the Freemasons were trying to do to our church by getting these guys in the position that they're in right now.
Right. Holy cow. Okay, so let me go to this fast interview with Cardinal Mueller.
Okay.
The questions that Raymond Arroyo is asking are really good. The answers are less.
What's your greatest fear going into this conclave? You've said, I'm going to quote you here, you fear, you've spoken about the possibility of schism and even a heretical pope. Does that haunt you?
The question is always also in the past that a candidate is thinking about the papacy only in the terms of political power and influence and the reaction of the masses to be beloved by the people. That is not what Jesus wanted. Jesus was died on the cross in the contradiction to the world. And therefore, the basis attribute for every pope must be the orthodoxy, to have the sound doctrine which is given to the church by the apostles. And this is a criteria.
Is that how we get to unity, you think? We need a pope who brings clarity to the fore.
Yeah, the clarity is given by Jesus Christ. Your words shall not be yes and tomorrow no, but our yes shall be a yes, our no a no.
Yeah. I want to explore something you said in an interview with the New York Times. You said of Pope Francis.
This is Mueller, right?
Yeah, this is Cardinal Mueller. I would have appreciated, because it's a good question, Raymond Arroyo, thanks for asking it, good job. But a follow-up, he didn't seem to understand. Like he said, so you said the fear of yours is schism coming out of this, schism if we get a bad pope, which seems very likely. And then he just sort of explained how that's a historical reality, Cardinal Mueller did. And then I would have loved if Raymond Arroyo followed up with, well, why is it a fear for this particular 2025 conclave? Why are you afraid of it? What are the particulars? Don't say anything you can't say, but read to us the signs of the times, read to us the cultural particulars and the ecclesial particulars that make you fear this.
And Tim does speed up the audio on a lot of these things. And people are like, oh, it's speeded up. Yeah, he typically speeds up the audio.
Because it's a 45-minute show. I'm trying to fit in as much as I can.
This is his style, to divide. All dictators are dividing. Do you believe Pope Francis ruled in a dictatorial way, contradictory way as well?
Not dictatorial way, I cannot say. He had his own character, and sometimes he made decisions. People didn't understand why. They didn't listen to reasons why he made these decisions. And we cannot always say, like somebody is saying, the Pope has every time the last word. There's a wrong understanding of papacy. It's not an absolute monarch. It's not a caliph of Baghdad or anything else. Like we have enough of these types in the politics. What is needed is a good pastor.
To protect the doctrine of faith.
So he didn't answer this question. Raymond Arroyo asked Cardinal Gerhard Mueller, so you wrote that basically Pope Francis was dictatorial and it's time for a non-dictatorial pope, or he said something like that. It's not a direct quote. And then Mueller kind of danced around it. He's like, well, I can't say if he's dictatorial, but we need a pope that's not like this. That's essentially all he said. It's like, could you elucidate a little bit? Could you remind us the historical particulars that grounded very thoroughly the rationale that grounds why you would make a charge against him like this? That would really help people looking back on the Francis pontificate, and he didn't seem to want to do that.
This is his first task. Therefore, it is given the Pope is, after the definition of the First and Second Vatican Council, the principle of the unity of all the bishops and faithful in the truth, the revealed truth of Jesus Christ.
How receptive are your brother cardinals to these ideas? Do they see it the same way, or is there?
Good question.
I didn't spoke with everybody, but I think if they have studied the theology in a good way, they can read it in the doctrine of the last councils.
Yeah, you were one of the most foremost critics, really, of the Synod on Synodality. This entire approach of governing the Church, it was the cornerstone of Pope Francis's legacy. And recently, the German bishops published a 4-page document blessing couples in irregular unions, including homosexual couples, those who are divorced and remarried and without annulments go to communion. This flows directly from Pope Francis's vision in Amoris Laetitia and other documents. It really is part and parcel of synodality. Your reaction to this, almost the extension of the synodal way.
Good question.
Germany.
Synodality is an old principle. It's not invented by Pope Francis, but we need a right understanding. The Protestants has also, with the other ecclesiology, also synods and synodality, and we have to interpret it in the Catholic sense. And the Catholic synods existed 1,500 years before the Protestantism. The Protestantism is not a model for shaping the Catholic faith, and we have to look to our own sources and our own criteria. Pope Francis made Irenaeus of Lyon a church father, and he was writing against Gnostics. And there we have a new form of Gnosticism and not of Catholic understanding. And he asked me to write a book against this modern Gnosticism and wrong understanding of Catholic doctrine.
So Arroyo asked a very good question. So isn't synodality, which is a procedural thing, really linked to moral laxism and leniency on the sexual rules in the church, which is a substantive thing? Isn't this procedural thing just sort of a way to cudgel in the moral leniency and laxism on sexual rules, both on like homos and on divorcees and on probably people who are having premarital sex as well? That's what he's really asking. And then Cardinal Mueller is just sort of answering like, well, synods are old, remember they're not actually brand new. They're just being used in a brand new way. They start talking about the Protestant Reformation. I mean, he's a very smart man, Mueller is, and he just answered these questions badly, but they're excellent questions that should have yielded more interesting answers.
After talking to your brother cardinals this past week, do you believe we're looking at the end of synodality? This approach where the laity are invited in and atheists.
This is a yes or no question.
Do you think we'll go back to actual bishops meeting alone?
No, we have two forms. One is the Synod of the Bishops. It's an expression, institutionalization of the collegiality of the bishops. And the other hand, we have a synodal assembly with all together. And the highest form of synodality is the Holy Eucharist, when we all are together. And we cannot forget the Eucharist as the center and the basis of our living together, not only speaking about.
So he asked a really good yes or no question. I wanted to hear the end. And normally Mueller speaks very directly. I don't know if he's just on a cold streak with his English or what, but should we expect to see the end of synodality or not? And he just gave there are two senses of synodality, this, that. He didn't even go circle back and say maybe one way or the other.
I remember sitting here 12 years ago and
here.
The person cannot know everything. He needs the good advices and different perspectives of the cardinals.
Your Eminence, I can remember sitting here 12 years ago and talking to a number of cardinals before and after the conclave. Pope Francis was elected as a reformer, to reform the Vatican bureaucracy here, the Curia, and to reform the finances of the Catholic Church.
He did neither thing.
In your opinion?
Yeah, this Vatican state is not belonging essentially to the mission of the Pope given by Jesus Christ. Is an aspect on the side. And
another non-answer.
Theologian, I cannot understand that the Pope is elected to reform the Vatican. The Vatican is only a civil organization, is not belonging to the Catholic Church. The Church is a body of Christ and not a worldly civil administration. Is only in favor, in service for the Holy See, but is not an ecclesial organization, not belonging to the Church.
Yeah. And it's in trouble now. I mean, financially, it's in trouble.
Arroyo didn't want to push back. I get why, because there's already a little bit of a language barrier. But man, he asked 5 or 6 banger dynamite questions. He asked a bunch of these in 2014, 2015, 2016 to Cardinal Mueller and got a bunch of banger answers, direct, straight on, dynamite answers. I think he was shocked to get such double speak here, or just he was responding to like a key phrase in the question rather than the call of the question. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is not because I wanted to criticize Cardinal Mueller, but rather because Raymond Arroyo's mind works similar to mine with this stuff. He's cutting through what he thinks is, wheat chaff, and pulling the weed out. And he seems to be thinking about this the way I have been for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday next. And Mueller, just who's one of the best cardinals, we're told, in the college, doesn't seem to be thinking this way.
But it's not the task of the Pope to make an order, but they have enough experts, and they should do it, not the Pope.
But did he reform the things he was called to reform?
Take the money.
Yeah, this is true. Keep your priorities in place.
The successor of St. Peter, not the successor of Judas.
We know.
The
money back. Always, those people with the money, be careful.
No problem. Well, tell me what qualities, as we wrap up here, what qualities are you looking for as you go into this conclave and ultimately cast your vote?
There's objective qualities, Christological, ecclesiological, and also the personal qualities. Must be a person of equivalence, not authoritarian and not anything goes, but must a good personality, conscious of his dignity, and he must be all the time needs a good spirituality. But spirituality is not only moving your eyes around, but the spirituality is living in the Holy Spirit, in the Spirit of Jesus Christ, who is with us, and with the power of the grace and the Holy Spirit. Everybody.
Okay, so I mean that's a good answer, but kind of generic. That's maybe the least interesting question. If a faithful Catholic asks a mostly faithful Catholic cardinal, what are you looking for? He's already a minority, and he gives a pretty good answer, somewhat generic anyway. Well, the question I would have liked to have heard asked by Raymond Arroyo is, what is the main criteria or criterion of the majority of the cardinals? And of course, he would have been able to say, well, I'm not quite sure, but what's the sense you get of the sort of typical cardinal, if we took mean, median, mode of these guys? What do they care about most coming into this conclave? I would have appreciated hearing that.
Tim, I don't know if you want to respond, but our favorite fun boy had just posted an update from Rome.
The James Martin FJ.
You naughty pet.
The naughty pet.
He said, this is his, I kid you not, this is his caption, and I haven't even listened to this yet. Update from Rome. The Vatican as a village with only one topic on everyone's lips.
The Vatican is the village with.
Hey everyone, it's Father Jim Martin on the rooftop of the Jesuit Curia here in Rome. There's St. Peter's behind me. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a flavor of what things are like in the Vatican today.
Can you pause it?
I feel like
everything he says is gross. Do you understand? You're one of these human beings. There's a name for them. Everything you do is gross, man. Like everything you say, whether you say rooftop or flavor or lips, everything you say makes me nauseous. You're disgusting. All right, play.
It's a little village. As you probably know, there's something like 4,000 journalists here.
4,000 of them?
All of them are on the Borgo Pio, which is a popular place for people to eat. And you see cardinals and bishops and journalists and Vatican commentators of all sorts. And the other day, someone said to me, well, how do you find out news from the Vatican? And as we were eating on the Borgo Pio, a journalist came up to me and said, "Oh, Father James, the conclave is on May 7th. And then at the next table, someone came over and said, "Did you hear the conclave is on May 7th?" And so that's how you hear things in Rome, in this kind of little village. The other place to meet people.
A village with village peoples.
I think we need to back up a second. I think he said, let me see what he says here.
The place to meet people, of course, is in front of the Jesuit Curia. It's kind of a crossroads for a number of reasons. And there's one topic on everyone's minds and lips these days, which is who. And again, you hear so many rumors, who's up, who's down, who made a very interesting intervention in the general congregation, who has the bad intervention. But again, we're not going to know. But I think what's kind of interesting is that more so than certainly in New York or Washington, it does really feel like a little village where everyone knows each other. Cool. And news travels fast. So from the Jesuit Curia, this is Father Jim Martin. God bless you.
God bless you.
It's like a little village with all the little village people and their outfits and their costumes. They're so cute, Father James. He's so gross. You're gross, sir. That's all I have to say. From the rooftop where I'm sunning my skins and eatings. I'm doing eatings and sunnings of my skins. He's just disgusting. It's that simple. Is there anything else to say about Father James?
No, he'll retreat back to his rooftop.
I'm going to retreat back down the hole.
Somebody said in chat, they're like, "You're gross, sir."
You're gross. I said that too. Yeah. Michael Scott to Stanley. Yeah, we do the hardcore analysis when it's called for. We also just do straight up trolling when it's called for. The Borgo Pio is our favorite place to get crunchables, nibbles. We like to nibble on the Borgo Pio. Nibble on our vittles. Okay, so that's good. Well, we'll probably have lots of news next week. Probably do a show at least Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, probably Monday or Tuesday. Might take a day off. I'm guessing Monday through Friday next week, we will have a 4-episode week, if I had to guess. Probably do a show Monday, take off Tuesday, unless there's something tremendously interesting on the Borgo Pio. Something to snack our lips on.
Do you want to go get some vittles after this? See, I can't do it because it sounds like a woman. I'm just using a woman accent.
Like a straight woman.
Do you want to go with me to go get some vittles after this show?
Yeah. We'll probably do an episode Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, though. Not from our rooftop. Father Jim. I didn't know he called himself Father Jim.
That's...
Yeah.
Gotta be with us all. How about this? We'll go out on this beautiful, the Vatican media showing the preparation of the Sistine Chapel. God wills it.
Jay as well.